Welcome, deep divers, to another fascinating exploration. Today, we're really plunging into something making profound waves, from Washington, D.C. all the way down to South Carolina.
Yeah, it's this once theoretical blueprint for America that seems to be, well, actively getting implemented now, right in the halls of power.
Exactly, and it's sparking some pretty intense political battles across the country. We're talking about Project 2025.
Right, this detailed plan to, fundamentally reshape the federal government.
And its own architect, Paul Dans, he's actually claiming its vision is unfolding way beyond his wildest dreams. That's quite a statement.
It is, and it raises huge questions. What does this actually mean for federal agencies, for the people who work there?
And how is this grand vision igniting these high-stakes primary contests, like the one heating up right now in South Carolina? We should also look at public perception, right?
Absolutely. Public opinion plays such a crucial role in how all of this unfolds.
So stay with us as we unpack how these ideas, these plans on paper are becoming, the reality of governance and what it all might mean for you.
Yeah, it's a really compelling set of developments, and our mission today basically is to take the stack of sources we have. There's a Q&A with Paul Dans, Project 2025's former director.
The architect himself.
Right, and also these detailed public opinion polls from South Carolina. We want to pull out the most important insights from all that.
Okay.
To really show you how a blueprint that was conceived, years ago is now actively shaping the federal government and fueling these really intense political battles.
While keeping an eye on what the public actually thinks. Makes sense.
Understanding that public opinion piece is key.
So let's dive into this blueprint Paul Dans calls beyond his wildest dreams. Maybe start with the basics. What exactly is Project 2025? How did it, come about?
Okay, so at its core, Project 2025, it's this comprehensive blueprint spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation, but it draws in over 45 different right-of-center organizations.
Wow, okay. So quite a coalition.
Definitely. And its ambition, well, it's nothing short of fundamentally reshaping the federal government as we know it.
And their philosophy seems pretty clear. They want to reverse what they call the progressive era expansion of the administrative state.
That's right. They trace it back over 100 years, figures like Woodrow Wilson, FDR.
And a key part is this unitary executive theory, right?
Yeah.
Asserting complete presidential power over federal agencies.
Exactly. And the underlying argument is fascinating. They believe this sort of expert class has kind of pushed aside the common person's destiny.
Okay.
And that this unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy, as they call it, has actively blocked policies that people actually voted for. They see this as like a necessary course correction.
Right. So to achieve these pretty ambitious goals, Project 2025 is structured around 4 pillars. Is that right? 4 interconnected pillars.
Yeah, that's how they've organized it. So first, there's the mandate for leadership. Think of it like a huge policy book. It outlines a conservative vision for basically how every federal agency should run.
Got it. And the second?
Second is something they call a conservative LinkedIn. It's an online personnel database.
To find people.
Exactly, to identify and place conservatives into administrative roles right across the government.
Makes sense. Personnel is policy, as they say. What's third?
Third, there's a Presidential Administration Academy. This is about training future conservative political appointees.
Training them in what? Effectiveness?
Yeah, governmental effectiveness, but also, aligning with Project 2025's goals.
Okay. And the final one, the 4th pillar.
That's the playbook. This translates all those policy ideas into practical implementation plans.
Like how to actually do it.
Right. Even identifying specific regulations, executive orders, things to target on day one of a new administration.
Okay. Really detailed then. And this brings us back to Paul Dans. He was the chief architect, the former director. Yeah. But what's really striking is, he left the project publicly in July 2024. Reports said it became a huge political liability for Donald Trump during the campaign.
That's right. It was getting a lot of attention. Democrats were warning about its, quote, radical agenda. Things like potential abortion bans, LGBTQ plus rights rollbacks, that complete presidential power idea.
It was even on Saturday Night Live, right?
It was. And Trump himself, he publicly denied reading it, claimed he had no idea who was behind it. Dans was, reportedly pressured to resign from Heritage.
But now, his perspective seems different.
Totally different. That's the really crucial insight here. Despite being pushed out, he now says he's delighted with how Project 2025 has basically become the Trump administration's playbook.
Wow. That's the aha moment, isn't it?
Huh.
He actually confirms there's almost no difference between the project and what the administration is doing now.
Yeah, calls it way beyond my wildest dreams.
But he does clarify, right, that the project was done outside of President Trump by the conservative movement itself.
He does, but he suggests that, great minds just share a common direction. It really makes you wonder about the influence of these outside policy groups.
It certainly does. So his perspective kind of validates this deliberate strategy to implement these goals.
I think so, yeah. The focus is laser sharp on dismantling what they call the deep state, the administrative state. Dan's explicitly calls it anti-democratic and unconstitutional.
So let's talk specifics then. Which federal agencies or parts of government are really in the crosshairs here? What are the targets?
Well, a prime example is the Department of Education. Its abolition, getting rid of it, has been a target for conservatives since, 1980.
A long time.
Yeah. Dans argues its federalization has led to, his words, failing grades, declining test scores, poor literacy.
And the argument is that getting rid of it would let states handle it better.
Exactly. Empower state and local governments to step up and do their job without what he calls unfunded mandates from D.C. The core belief is education is best managed locally.
Okay. And then there's the Office of Personnel Management, OPM.
Right. Dans calls OPM the motherboard of the deep state because, like you said, personnel is policy.
So what's the specific critique there about federal employment?
It's a pretty fundamental critique of the whole civil service system. They point to stats saying nearly 99.5% of federal jobs now have protections.
That's up from
maybe 10% initially. And they also highlight that 99.7% of federal workers supposedly get fully successfully or better reviews each year.
which they contrast with the private sector.
Starkly. The argument is this system makes it incredibly hard to hold federal employees accountable or, remove people seen as inefficient.
That 99.7% figure is, wow. So focusing on OPM, is it just about rooting out deep state inefficiency, or is it something more fundamental?
I think it's more fundamental. It's not just efficiency. It's about reshaping the civil service itself to align more directly with the president's agenda.
A big shift from how it's operated for decades.
A foundational shift, yeah. Their playbook talks about faster dismissal processes, more direct executive control over who gets hired and fired.
And this focus isn't just domestic, right?
Yeah.
Foreign aid is also involved.
Absolutely. The U.S. Agency for International Development and Foreign Aid generally, they were initially slated for big reforms under Project 2025.
But now.
But now, the current administration, with figures like Elon Musk involved and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, seems to be moving even further, possibly towards elimination or major restructuring.
Moving its functions to the State Department, maybe?
That seems to be the discussion, yeah. And Dan supports this. He called USAID under Biden a complete perversion of its mission.
Strong words. Why?
He criticizes it for promoting a progressive worldview.
Yeah.
He uses terms like climate extremism, gender radicalism, abortion promotion, so a very strong ideological pushback.
Right. And that connects to the broader administration focus on fraud, waste, and abuse.
It does, which Dan himself admits looks very much like a political agenda targeting DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And Elon Musk's DOGE team, the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, they're reportedly finding big financial issues like untraceable trillions in spending. Though, when it comes to claims about Social Security fraud, even Dan says, I don't know one way or the other if they've been debunked.
So it sounds like a really confident assertion of executive power overall, especially when Dan dismisses court rulings against their actions as ultra-vires beyond their legal power.
Right, calling them a dangerous precedent.
How does that unitary executive theory fit into the bigger picture? Has it always been this contentious?
Well, it's a critical constitutional debate, isn't it? The theory basically says the president has supreme authority over the whole executive branch.
Proponents see it as restoring accountability, efficiency.
Exactly. Direct accountability, efficient governance. But critics, they argue it concentrates way too much power. It could erode checks and balances, undermine agency independence.
So it's not a new debate then?
Not at all. It's got a contentious history, argued over during many presidencies. It's always a flashpoint in how the executive branch interacts with Congress and the courts, and it's clearly central to Project 2025's goal of challenging the established bureaucracy.
Okay, so we've unpacked the blueprint, its goals for the federal government. But how are these ideological battles actually playing out? Let's shift to South Carolina.
Good idea. Because South Carolina is so deeply red, the real political competition, the intense stuff, happens in the GOP primaries.
Making those primaries effectively the general election.
Pretty much. And we're seeing a really high-stakes 2026 Senate primary challenge shaping up against Lindsey Graham, who's a 4-term senator.
And this really shows that intra-party conflict, right? Because Paul Dans, the Project 2025 architect we've been talking about.
Yeah, he's running. It's his first run for public office, and he's trying to unseat Graham.
And he's not mincing words, calling Graham a warmonger, the top swamp critter in the Senate.
Exactly. He says the Senate is the choke point for closing the door on the progressive era. It's a direct ideological challenge.
Not just about personality, but about the party's direction.
Precisely. And he's not the only challenger either. Andre Bauer, the former lieutenant governor, he's also running.
And his argument is similar.
Yeah, Bauer is a longtime Trump backer, and he says Graham isn't conservative enough that he votes like it because he's been there too long. It's that same kind of anti-establishment change sentiment.
So what about Lindsey Graham? He's been there since 2003. A long time.
A very long time. And his political journey is, well, famous from being a huge Trump critic back in the day.
Tell him to go to hell in 2015, wasn't it?
That's the one. To becoming a really staunch Trump advocate, he even got Trump's complete and total endorsement for this 2026 race.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Despite that endorsement, he's been booed at MAGA rallies.
Yeah, memorably booed by MAGA crowds in both 2023 and 2024, which indicates, pretty significant dissatisfaction from at least a part of Trump's base.
Suggesting Trump's endorsement doesn't automatically guarantee universal support from his followers.
Exactly. And just to add another layer, Chris LaSavita, who was Trump's 2024 co-campaign manager, he's now joined Graham's campaign as a senior advisor. And he publicly criticized Dans, saying he was unceremoniously dumped from Project 2025.
Wow. So the battle lines are clearly drawn.
It's a fascinating dynamic. This race really just perfectly exemplifies that struggle inside the Republican Party. Traditional conservatives versus the America First, MAGA wing.
And Dan's running makes it a real test, doesn't it? Can the Project 2025 philosophy directly influence who gets elected to Congress, not just how the executive branch operates?
That's exactly the question. It's a major test case.
Okay, so to really understand these dynamics, we need to look at public opinion. You mentioned that Winthrop poll from February 2025 in South Carolina. What does it tell us?
Right, it gives us vital context. So a few key findings. First, Trump's approval, it's definitely riding high among his base. 45% of all South Carolinians approve, but that jumps to 53% among those who actually gave an opinion.
Okay. And Elon Musk? He keeps coming up.
He does. Views on him are split, 38% favorable, 41% unfavorable overall, but it's sharply partisan. 67% of Republicans view him favorably.
Compared to Democrats.
A stark 79% of Democrats view him unfavorably. And interestingly, 62% of South Carolinians think he has a lot of influence in the Trump administration.
That's a high number. What about trust in government generally?
That's a really significant finding. A big chunk, 41% of both Republicans and Democrats in South Carolina distrust the federal government to do what's best.
Both parties.
That's interesting.
Yeah, widespread federal distrust. But it contrasts sharply with views of the state government. 65% of Republicans trust the SE state government, while only 30% of Democrats do.
Which probably reflects the GOP control at the state level.
Likely, yeah.
Okay, what about immigration? Always hot topic.
Definitely. The poll found 75% support deporting illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
That's 90% among Republicans.
But is it that simple? Not entirely. When you drill down, public opinion gets more nuanced. A majority, 56%, oppose quickly deporting detained immigrants if it means separating families.
Okay.
And 55% oppose deporting childhood arrivals, the so-called dreamers. So it shows there's complexity there beyond just a blanket deport everyone sentiment.
Right. And the really contentious issue, voter fraud, especially around 2020.
Yeah, that's a stark finding. 42% of South Carolinians still believe there was significant voter fraud in the 2020 election.
Including a majority of Republicans.
Including 64% of Republicans, yeah, despite multiple investigations finding no widespread evidence.
But what about 2024? The election Trump won.
That's where it flips dramatically. For 2024, 63% believe there was not significant fraud, and 78% of Republicans agree there wasn't significant fraud in the election Trump won.
Wow. That strongly suggests perceptions of election integrity can be heavily influenced by who wins.
It certainly seems that way, based on this data.
And finally, the poll looked at broader perceptions of the parties themselves. How are Democrats and Republicans viewed overall in South Carolina?
It's quite revealing. South Carolinians tend to associate respectful and tolerant with Democrats, but also supports policies that interfere too much in people's lives.
Okay. And Republicans?
Republicans are seen as governs in an honest and ethical way, also good at getting their way, willing to do what it takes to win elections, and crucially, will not compromise.
Will not compromise. That stands out.
It does. And interestingly, both parties are widely seen as too extreme. It paints a picture of a public that sees positives, but also major flaws in both parties.
And there was something about people feeling afraid to express opinions.
Yeah, quite telling. 46% of South Carolinians said they felt they couldn't express their political opinions in the past year because they feared verbal attack or harassment. Almost half.
That's a sobering statistic about the climate.
Yeah.
So wrapping this all up, what does it mean for you, the listener, for the bigger picture?
Well, Project 2025, it's clearly not just theoretical anymore. It's tangibly impacting the federal government agencies, the civil service.
Yeah, this deep dive really shows how those visions, those ideas on paper, are actively shaping real-world politics, both in D.C. and in places like South Carolina.
And the significance, it really can't be overstated. This restoration of democracy that Project 2025 advocates talk about, it involves a fundamental rethinking of the balance of power
Between the president, Congress, and the federal bureaucracy.
Exactly. And the challenges that incumbents like Lindsey Graham are facing, even with top endorsements, they signal this powerful drive for ideological purity, for alignment with the America First agenda within the GOP.
It's a battle for seats, sure, but also for the very direction of how the country is governed.
Precisely.
So as this battle to reshape the federal government continues, and we see these new players emerge, moving from blueprints to actual ballots, what fundamental questions does all this raise for the future of governance, for the nature of political power in America?
That's the question to ponder, isn't it?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.